Hello and welcome. Today, we are diving into a mystery that stretches across continents and thousands of years. It's an absolutely epic journey of survival that connects the steppes of Central Asia all the way to the Americas.
Okay, let's just get right into it with the big question. You've probably heard this idea floating around, but is there a real connection between the indigenous peoples of the Americas and the Turkic peoples of Central Asia? Well, to get to the truth, we have to travel way back in time, to a world that was literally being reshaped by ice. Our story kicks off about 15,000 years ago, and it doesn't start with people just deciding to go for a walk. It starts with them running for their lives from a cataclysmic event. We're talking about an ancient environmental disaster that, according to our source, changed the entire course of human history.
So, for hundreds of thousands of years, you have to picture massive sheets of ice covering a huge chunk of the planet. Humanity was kind of squeezed into this temperate zone, with a major hub of life popping up in the Caspian-Turan basin in Central Asia. But then, right around 15,000 years ago, something happened. The global thermostat got cranked way up.
That sudden warming triggered what scientists call the Kavalian uplift. Basically, all the meltwater from those enormous Eurasian glaciers came pouring into the Caspian Basin. And the source material we're looking at actually connects this unbelievable event to the great flood legends. You know, the ones that show up in cultures all over the world.
And the scale of this thing, it is just mind-boggling. The water level in this massive inland sea didn't just rise a little bit. It shot up from 150 meters below sea level to 50 meters above it. That's a 200-meter jump. To put that in perspective, that's like the water suddenly rising higher than a 50-story skyscraper. Just incredible.
This was no local flood. This was a world-changing event. It created an inland sea about the size of modern-day Egypt. And the source argues that the civilization that had been growing in this basin for so long was just shattered. People had to flee. They went north, south, west, and, most important for our story, a group of them headed east.
So while a lot of people were pushed out towards what we now call Europe and the Middle East, one group turned the other way. They started this incredibly hard journey east, right into the vast frozen expanse of Siberia.
Now, the source gives these people a pretty unique name, the Altay intelligent human. It's important to note this isn't an official scientific term. It's the author's way of describing a distinct population that was really forged by the tough environment of Central Asia. And they base this on evidence from the famous Denizlival cave, which suggests people have been living in that region for a very, very long time.
And this migration, wow! It wasn't just a quick trip. We're talking about a multi-generational trek across one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. From the Altai Mountains, they just kept pushing east, generation after generation, until they finally got to the edge of a whole new world, the Bering Land Bridge.
But here's where the story takes a really fascinating twist. They didn't just walk across into America. Nope, the genetic evidence tells us they stopped, they paused, for thousands of years in a land that doesn't even exist anymore.
This leads us to a really cool idea called the Beringian Standstill Hypothesis. The theory goes that this land bridge, Beringia, wasn't just some narrow, icy path. It was a massive piece of land, maybe as big as Texas, and for a long time, it was a totally livable place, a kind of lost world, with enough fuel and game to support a population in complete isolation.
And this long pause, which might have lasted up to 10,000 years, was absolutely critical. This was the moment of transformation. Because they were totally cut off from their ancestors back in Asia, this group developed its own unique genetic signature. They weren't just Siberians anymore. They were becoming something new.
As one geneticist, Connie Mulligan, puts it, and our source quotes her here, this is when they began to separate from the Asians and become Native Americans. So, in a way, the ancestors of the first peoples weren't really born in Asia or America. They were born in this in-between world during this thousands of years-long standstill.
So when the massive ice sheets that have been blocking the way into North America finally started to melt, it was this new, genetically distinct group of people, the Proto-Native Americans, who moved south and ended up populating 2 entire continents, which brings us right back to where we started.
So, what's the final verdict? Well, it's complicated. Is there a direct genetic link you can trace from one to the other? No. A direct linguistic connection? Nope. The languages are fundamentally different. A clear cultural link? Well, the similarities that do exist are probably just because both groups developed in similar kinds of environments. The connection isn't direct kinship, it's a shared, incredibly ancient starting point. But, and this is really cool, while there's no direct scientific link, the source does point out some fascinating, almost poetic echoes. You see words like tepek for hill in some Mesoamerican languages and tepe in Turkish, or chapul for locust and chapul for swarm. Now, these aren't proof of anything, but they're pretty amazing coincidences, right? They're like these little ghosts of a shared, deep history.
At the end of the day, the conclusion is pretty clear. Even though both peoples can trace their deepest, most ancient roots back to the steppes of Central Asia, thousands upon thousands of years of separation, migration, and adaptation created two completely distinct groups of people.
So this isn't a story about one group being an offshoot of another. It's more like a story about two different families who set out from the same hometown, but whose long, separate journeys across entirely different worlds forged them into the unique peoples they are today.
It's just a powerful reminder of how much of our own human story has been shaped by these immense forces we can barely even comprehend, forces of ice and water and time. It really makes you wonder what other incredible journeys and lost worlds are out there, still hidden, waiting for us to uncover them.